What's going on, everybody? Hope you are having a wonderful week so far. Podcast time. Hiroko Yamamura. I definitely pronounced that wrong, so I am sorry, Hiroko. I have been aware of Hiroko's career for a while. I've loved her music that she's released. I've never seen her DJ. However, I have heard a lot of amazing things about her DJ sets. And every time I hear somebody talk about her DJing, they say the most amazing things about how her sets were. She actually played the after party in Detroit, and sadly I couldn't make it to actually see her play. So I'm a bit bummed out about that. But the next best thing was sit down for an hour and 45 minutes and have a really good conversation with her. So I'm just going to leave you with it. So without further ado, Hiroko Yamamura. I definitely said that wrong, sorry. Hiroko, what's cooking?
Hey, how's it going? Things are good. It's kind of a rainy day in Chicago. We had crazy storms last night, so just kind of waking up late day, but nice. I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me, Will.
Thanks for coming on. It's an absolute honor to meet you in person, well, online, I guess, because we've been on the same lineups a few times and still haven't caught each other. So
I think we've kind of like fist bumped and given each other the nods a couple times, and but unfortunately, we haven't had the chance to sit down and talk. So excited.
It's nice to have you on. I really appreciate you coming on because I know it's time differences are a nightmare, and you getting up early to do this. So I really appreciate it. How's life anyway?
Things are really good. Just been kind of getting back to things. I was kind of a slow starter and reattaching to society and all that kind of stuff. So it's a slow progress, but I think I'm finally making progress and coming back into the world.
What was that post-COVID?
Post-COVID, and just, I was one of those people that really, I kind of didn't see people for a really long time, and I got used to that. So, but enough's enough, and I've started kind of hanging around people again and being a bit more social and stuff. So
do you find yourself
challenges?
Do you find yourself more as an introvert type of person?
Absolutely. That is my MO. I'm kind of I'm one of those folks that is an extreme introvert unless we're good friends, and then I'm really annoying and talk too much at that point.
I was actually listening to a podcast this morning about introverts and how introverts work, because I would class myself as pretty introvert, although I think a lot of people would kind of question that because I have a podcast and obviously we DJ in front of lots of people, and I think I always thought I was an introvert my whole life, and the podcast kind of confirmed that I was, because I didn't realize that introverts could still have really good conversations and all of that, and have real close friends and want to actually socialize with
we're
people.
Still humans, right?
Are you the type of person, so there was a part in the podcast that was talking about an introvert is less likely to be somebody that wants to go to an after party after a party. Are you the type to want to go to an after party or not?
No, absolutely not. If that after party is like a LAN party with video games and like snacks, and we don't have to see the sunlight, and there's some like anime or something to watch, that I'm totally in. Or if it's like a studio jam with some friends, and that sounds good. But typically seeing the daylight is a bad signal to me. Like there's something in my body that's like, you should be in bed right now. I'm trying to get there though.
The thing that I always struggle with is when, and I'm sure you've had this plenty of times, when the actual party hasn't even started and you've got people asking you when the after party is or what the after party is. And I'm just like, can you just not enjoy the moment? Can you not just accept that now we're having fun?
Sing past your sad and everything else. Yeah, that's what other folks are for, I think, right? I'm sure you're just as nervous right before you play, and while you're playing, that kind of where the night's going to go is totally not on your mind at that time. So
do you get nervous when you play?
I get terrified before I play every set.
Really?
It's one of those like anxiety things, and I think that's part of being a DJ. It's about like, it's not about planning, but it's about if this happens and this, if this happens and this. So if the crowd is totally not going your direction, part of what your job is to do it is to like memorize on which USBs, what songs are. And so you're kind of always rushing through the catalog of music in your head, right? And where those things could go and that kind of stuff. So
is anxiety a big part of your life?
It is a huge part of my life. But that's also what gives me, it's always been part of my life. So the tools to prepare and kind of foresee possible outcomes, and this may be a terrible way to do things, but that's how you plan. And when there is a problem, you have some tools to deal with it when that happens.
How did you learn those tools?
Gosh, by just like freaking out all the time and deciding like, I'm not just going to stay inside and play video games my entire life and just play on Reactor, trying to make a bass sound for 3 years or something.
Yeah. So. I guess for me, I don't really, of course I get anxiety. I feel like everybody does it to certain levels, but I've been really lucky where I don't often get nervous before doing a show. I don't know why. But what I do get is imposter syndrome massively.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. We're, surrounded by DJs and producers like you and all these greats. And it's like, but part of that is like, it's never up to you, right?
Yeah.
It's up to whoever is in attendance or what people are listening to that day. I'm sure your music taste can change by the day and what band is your favorite band. So I kind of ignore that portion of things and accept that as being out of my hands, because it could all go away tomorrow, but I'm sure you're going to still be in the studio doing the same thing. So, it is tough. There's so many amazing producers and DJs and so much talent, and I'm sure you have a million friends that you would put above you on a pedestal. And it's hard. It's hard to deal with sometimes.
Yeah, it is. I guess. So what was it? What was the first show back for you when you came, coming out of COVID?
Oh, so it was actually this festival called Unum in Albania, and it was one of those things that it was an amazing festival, and I made amazing good time. But they had these, they were working with the government. They're going to have all these tests. I was one of those folks that was like yelling at people for DJing during COVID. And I'm sorry, everybody. I kind of overreacted on folks, but that's what you do when you're sitting at home behind a keyboard, right? You just start.
Well, I think this is the thing that happens, and I think this is why I asked you the question, but also it's like when we're by ourselves, when we don't have conversations, when we I feel like I can only speak for myself, but I feel like your judgment can kind of spew like all over the place, and kind of the way you process information changes completely. And I think also during COVID and since COVID and up until now, still now, I feel like we're in it. Like the overload of information we get given every single day on a negative scale is through the roof. And I don't think human beings should have to process it. Like for me, what do you do? I know I'm going to get back to Albania, but what do you do to kind of do you do anything to kind of shut the noise out?
I go the opposite way. I want to know what being from Chicago, you have kind of this a very wide mixture of opinions and political divisions and beliefs. And sometimes it's a dude you grew up with that starts saying the craziest stuff online. And that doesn't necessarily make them a terrible person.
No.
But it's also like, it's okay to say like, dude, that's a terrible thing to say. I tend to do those things directly though. I don't enjoy making a public display of those things, especially if you're a friend of mine.
Yeah.
That's going to be a direct conversation, not something that's happening on Twitter. I'm going to message you or call you and being like, hey, we're going to box next time I see you because that was really terrible. But, it gets messy with social media because you start to have relationships with people online that you actually don't know.
Yeah.
Right? You've never broken bread with them. You don't know their middle name. So to take one sentence or even 20 sentences they've said on social media and to form an opinion, whether or not it can be a terrible opinion, it's still a very controlled facet. And most of the time, if you're writing something, you have some intention, right?
Yeah.
Like you're trying to impress a girl or trying to make a certain group of your friends laugh. You've made the choice to put this on the internet for not your direct friends' text to consume. So, and when people were very lonely over lockdown and COVID, and it was a terrible time for people, and a lot of people are still dealing with that. And sometimes getting that negative attention was better than nothing, right? So I try to give people some leniencies. But even on like Facebook, I will follow a lot of these crazy social conservative pages and stuff because I know what my friends think, right?
Yeah.
We've been mates for 20 years, right? It's pretty clear. So I'd actually rather know what the population that I'm not around is saying, right? Just in case.
I actually really like that because I think there's so many people that aren't willing to have aren't willing to even listen to what other people's opinions are, especially if they are on a different view, whether that's politically, whether that's musically, whether that's whatever in life. I think we live in a day and age where people just aren't willing to listen unless their views align with each other. And I think that's what makes a really unhealthy population, if you ask me. It's like listening to the same genre of music. Like, could you imagine how boring life would be if you just listened to the same every single day?
So especially if you listen to music a lot, right? Like even your favorite song.
Yeah.
Imagine listening to a 16-bar loop of that over and over, right? You will hate it.
That's why we're absolute lunatics, because we do that every day to our own records.
But it's like, most of the time, if there's somebody that let's say I kind of go after somebody online, I've been waiting to go after them for something else, right? Like this is the 100th thing in a long line of something. And I'm like, oh, I finally got you.
Yeah.
I got you, right? So most of the time when you'll see action on that, it is that's the thing that broke the camel's back, or there's 60 people that are like, this person's kind of a jerk. I don't know if I can swear or not.
You can swear as much as you want.
This person's a fucking asshole. And you're like, oh yeah, this person is an asshole. Then you start putting all these memories together when they're really rude to you or something, and you're like, I got you. Now I'm gonna say some shit. So but that's such an easy way to like get somebody when you have like 100 other people on social media saying the same thing. It's like, now it's not interesting to pick a fight with them.
I think the thing also that I find as well, the people that get somebody in brackets always have the chance to be gotten by that crew as well. And I think it's a vicious cycle. And I think the one thing that can cure it is conversation. And
absolutely. And it's you probably have a bunch of friends that don't even run their own social medias, right? And they don't have their own Instagram. So who are you actually arguing with at that point, especially in the music industry or entertainment? So I think part of this is you have to accept that people are fallible, right? Like something I always tell my friends is like, you've probably said the worst thing in the world to your parents, right? Or to your family, like the people you love and care about more than anything are the people you've said the most terrible, regrettable things to, right? And it is that like illusion or feeling of closeness that breaks down those barriers. And so you're not really thinking when you are arguing with someone you really love. So because your emotions are hot, that wall isn't there. So sometimes that happens. That's part of being fallible. And sometimes you say the most ridiculous things just to try to upset somebody, right? You're like, I really want to hurt you right now. And you draw from maybe things that you said a long time ago, and you're like, oh my God, did that just come out? And that's not what you want to be typing on the internet. But the fact is, like, gosh, we do say terrible things to each other sometimes, right? And maybe that's a lesson. And you don't say that to your family, right? And you don't say, when you see that written out, you're like, gosh, who would ever say that? You're like, well, that was me 5 years ago. I said that to my mom when she would let me borrow the car or something crazy,
So how do you process that? How do you process that when you're in that state of mind where you want to say something, but do you process it before you say it and you're like, well, no, I shouldn't say this?
I'm a very passive aggressive person. So that's where getting creative comes in. But I always feel like that's not what social media is really for. If you're, I'm sure out of all your followers, less than 1% of them personally, right? So when you're making a post, are you posting to your less than 1%? Are you posting to the folks, right? So you have to understand that. And then, I'm like, my social media accounts got in trouble because of during all the political unrest, I was saying pretty crazy things to folks that violated terms of conditions and stuff. But sometimes it kind of feels good. And when you have that machine of that is the trend, you'll fall for it sometimes, right? And you know what? Part of understanding where those lines are is you sometimes have to touch them personally, right? You have to run into them and be like, oh, that's terrible. Or someone will message you and be like, did you really mean that verbal threat that you gave to me online? And then you're like, no, dude, there's no way I could actually beat you up in a fight. So I don't know how you're taking that seriously. Like, you'll totally win,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, I guess it changes every day. And I try to be conscious of it and try to be responsible. But at the same time, it's like this very primitive brain that we're sometimes like, this feels good, this tastes good, this is survival, and we fall for it, But then there's consequences, and we learn from them.
Yeah, huge. I think for me, especially during COVID, I went completely the opposite, where before COVID, I was sharing a lot of my personal life on social media. And then, although I do share a lot on social media, but during COVID, I was like, okay, I'm stopping that. And I'm literally, it sounds awful, but I'm literally just treating social media like a business. And it's part of my business. And I will stop following everything that I really am not that interested in. I unfollowed 1,000 people on
Mute is great. Muting is great.
I just unfollow now. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I really don't care if somebody has an issue with me unfollowing them. Like, it doesn't bother me. But for me, it was more so unfollowing for my own good. So your
own stimulus.
Yeah, and I think it really helped me because I just shut myself away from the bigger world and really didn't pay attention to what's going on in the news or anything. And I think there's a naivety to that, which probably isn't the best of things, but I literally curate what I see myself, and that helps me be creative. That helps me be a better person and more positive in my own life, which then means I can then give back more to people that follow me on social media or in life. There was a point when all the BLM started happening and it just got like social media just got messy. Even the news got really messy. And since then, although I was super interested in parts of it, there was parts of it that I just thought was super toxic. And I was like, I can't have this in my life. If I want to carry on making music, if I want to carry on DJing and being part of this career, I have to change what I'm consuming. And that, for me, that was just like, I just need to get the fuck out of here and strictly do what makes me happy.
Yeah, and you know, when the algorithm notices that, that's going to even start feeding you that even more. So it's like when it's almost like terror porn, right? And it you can tell that these have a longer interaction. You're hanging on these videos of these things, and it's going to just keep feeding you those. So it's tough. You know what I always tell my friends is something like Instagram is like a picture app, right? It's not meant for like all these things. So let's just look at like hot girls on Instagram, right? Like this is what I want to open my phone and be like, oh, this is great, you know. Big up all the models out there.
Right. I'm so jealous of them so much.
It's so great. But it's also like, I'm sure for you as well, like my social media it's a meme page, right? Like I just post silly pictures. I also feel very awkward making ads, right? To be like, hey, you should buy my record. Yeah. And then like 2 days later be like, you should buy my record. And then post where the gig is that week. And then folks are like, what, you DJ? We're here for some memes, you know? So part of that is like, Instagram is a pictures app. Yeah. That's what it was meant for, right? It's to look at stuff, and people want good visual composition with their super AMOLED screen phones and all that stuff. So it's partially understanding what that is there for, right? And when folks are like, why is this DJ posting this picture in this bikini on the beach? And I'm like, because they look awesome. Yeah. It looks great on my phone. So more power to them, you know?
Yeah, no, I think I like that as well. And if we're talking about social media, your social media cracks me up every single day and literally makes me smile on another level. And I think that's amazing with what you were saying, is that that hot girl or hot guy posting a picture, both posting like a half naked picture on the beach, or you posting memes, like people enjoy this. And although necessarily the memes aren't linked to your music, or the half naked person isn't linked to the music, you're still giving people what they really enjoy and what actually makes them happy. And I think for me that speaks 1,000 words, and it just makes people happy. And I think for me, like that's all I want to do on this planet, is make people happy.
Absolutely. And if you are a really attractive person that has worked on their beach body all year on that treadmill, like, and you want to show that off, and you're proud of the way you look, like,
go for it.
Go for it. Like, that's your truth then, right? If your reality is like you are actually on a beach that day drinking booze with like fabulous people, and you want to share that, that's your truth, right? Like, I think you run in this dangerous place when you start trying to like build this image and things you should post. People are smarter than you think, and so you can tell when there's like a disingenuous like if I start posting beach photos in Ibiza, doing all these, people are like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's there's a mismatch there, and your friends are gonna call you out first. They're gonna be the
100%.
first ones on the post, being like, "What are you doing? You Photoshop this, dude," or like, "I can see your filter on your face," you know. So, it is what it is, and it's a new time in the way that, like, even over the last 3 to 4 years, the want for people to get information about you as an artist or about your release, they're going to the Instagrams now. They're going to these places, and they're not looking for this like highly curated PR campaign that 5 different PR companies are running. They just want, you're going to post this video that your new release is out, and that's how people are finding out about it. So it's changing the whole game of the industry, I think.
I think it's all about authenticity, right? Of what fits that artist and who that artist is. And I think you have to find your niche, what works for you as a person. And once you've got that, like, let's say, for instance, like you look at Fisher, like I could never do that. I don't feel like you could ever do what Fish does, right? Like, it's just not us. But for Fish, it's perfect. And he's the best at doing that. There's nobody else that can do it better than him.
And there is, even in the opposition of that, there's a whole wave of people that their time is spent making fun of it, right? And it was almost kind of built to have some laughs with, right? Yeah. And people are aware of that. And I think that's important to have as well, right? Like, everything doesn't have to be this serious thing all the time. And that's probably their personality as well, right? To like, So
how did the whole meme queen come around? Because you are literally the queen of memes.
Well, so I've always been like a video gamer. Yeah. So I think this idea of having a avatar persona online has always been a thing, right? So, and it has always been kind of you're trying to pick a fight with people and get them to play Halo with you or something like that, and antagonize like a 5-year-old. Like, I'm gonna get you and your mom or whatever, over Xbox. But I think a lot of it. I mean, I've been a shit poster on the internet since junior high, so it's just kind of my nature. And then I didn't have much else to do during lockdown, right? Like, probably listen to the same tracks over and over, thinking I was going to finish them, and didn't get them done. And then it was just kind of a fun thing. It's almost, this is terrible, and I don't mean to say this way, but like, it's like pulling records when you're like, oh, there's a vibe on this, and at this moment, this kind of feels good, and you don't know what you're going to play next, and you kind of like, well, I think I need to go in this direction. And of course, music is far more important than a meme, but it felt good, and then some people appreciated it, right? I think kind of sub under all of this, there is some intention that it's important to kind of allow people to have a place to say that they don't feel great, and that things aren't necessarily the best. People message me all the time, and they're like, wow, I appreciate you saying that. Like, shit is terrible right now, and there's no getting around that. And I'm like, yeah, fucking sucks. And sometimes it's better to have camaraderie, I guess, around a bad feeling. But at the same time, like, some friends of mine will always message me like, are you all right, dude? Like, this is kind of a dark thing. And I appreciate that. But then those are the friends, like, 3 months later, they're the ones sending me the pictures, being like, I can't post this on my social media, but this has to get out there. So you gotta get this out there somehow. So it's a place to ship posts, and I do get in trouble all the time from the various places, but it's the rules are changing on those, and they change every day, right? Like, depending on what's happening in the world, some things are terribly inappropriate from one day to another. So it's important to try to stay on top of that.
Do you make them yourself?
Absolutely not. I steal everything. No, yeah, I think the few that I have made, I've always gotten in trouble for. And like I had a friend who works at Facebook, and they like had to sit down with me, and they're like, "You really have to be a bit more responsible about this." And I was like,
"Why?"
No, I don't. These are pictures, right? But at the same time, I understand what they're saying. There are people, especially as things grow. There's kids. There's folks of different backgrounds, and I can understand how people might interpret things differently. Especially when you're from the Midwest and maybe socially closed off from things.
I would say you're the least socially closed off person, though.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, right? Social closed off means very different things, right? So I don't know what it's like to be a 12-year-old kid and what information and rules there are to interaction. I think those rules have generally, people are so connected now in a way that you wouldn't have imagined 10 years ago, right?
But to butt in with that, do you think you should know? Do you think it's your responsibility to know?
There's this weird point. So there is the jokes that I would make when you and I hang up this podcast, maybe.
Yeah.
There's the jokes that we would make on this podcast. And then there's these jokes that if anyone ever said that doesn't make me feel good, or like, I don't like that. If I don't like you, maybe I'll keep going. Or like if someone is ever standing in front of you and they're like, I don't like that word. I don't like what you said. It makes me feel sad, makes me feel bad.
Yeah.
I preferred you said this or this. Like if you're a semi-decent person, if that person is standing in the room with you, you're going to be like, I'm so sorry, right?
Totally. Yeah.
I didn't mean to upset you. I generally didn't understand that this was what it was. And so when you start separating that to the internet and then multiplying that, sometimes, like I said, folks don't understand that distance and you don't know them. And that when you say something and it does hurt them or they feel grouped in with that, that's how some folks are, right? And their interaction is on the internet. So yeah, there's a bit of that where you're like, okay, that made somebody not feel great about themselves or sad, right? That's never what you want to do. So even though you might say, oh, the morality of the situation is to say what you feel and to express things as an art, or in the end, if one person out of 1,000 feels sad out of something, I'm not going to say it, right? Unless I really don't like you, then I'm gonna really dig into it, right?
But I also think like part of this is comedy, right? And I'm not a comedian, but I think the whole point of comedy for me is to say things that people want to say but aren't willing to say in a way that makes people laugh. Like there's actually not really any comedy that isn't real life. It's very to the bone, and I think that's why it's comedy, and I think that's why people love it, because there's a very small percentage of comedians, or comedians generally, they're very small percent of the population that are willing to say something that the other part of the population aren't willing to say.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what you're doing with memes. It is comedy. For me,
it is comedy for a very specific. Yeah. Yes. I see comedians though. When you have like a famous comedian with a platform, that writer or that person saying that thing, that's not one person. That's a team of 100 writers with a publicist and an analyst doing machine learning algorithms on what they think direction will be and profiting. And so I think it's important that even when you're in comedy, you're still somebody doing something. And if you're in a position that you can take the brunt of the backlash, which most of the time you are prepared for, you know, you push this button, this is going to launch this space shuttle or whatever it might be. So, you know, people do those things for the intention of reaction as well. So, yes, the problem is comedy is not the end all be all, because I'll look at some of the things I posted 6 or 10 years ago and I'm like, wow, I said that word on Facebook, or I put this in music, or I sampled this, or I felt comfortable enough with this person to use this word, you know, like, wow, what was wrong with me, right? But next year, that could change in the other direction too. So it's like, you tend to respect people as well that are very true and stick to this like ideal. But at the same time, like, someone could be the best comedian saying all these things, but you can be like, man, what you said in the last comedy special, I think that was fucked up, right? Or I don't like that. Doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you boycott everything they do. But like, be like, man, that kind of made me uncomfortable to hear. And it's okay to be like, as a customer, like, I'm a paying customer, I go to see you live and doing comedy acts, which is like, it's like $150 or something. I'm not asking you to give me the comedy show I want, but at the same time, dollars speak. And if you're like, I might not go see the person next time because like I felt totally awkward because the person sitting next to me felt awkward, and then the rest of the show sucked because of that, and I didn't get my money's worth. So it's tough because you know, that is just as much as a marketing gimmick as the social justice warrior kind of marketing position too, to be like, I am this really wholesome white knight for the world. You know, we've got these two branches of thought on entertainment, equally going for the same bag at this point, right?
Actually, that's the thing. What's your, from going from what you were saying to like how you feel comedy works, how do you relate that to DJing and playing music in a club? Because people are still paying to see us play. We're lucky enough that people want to pay to see us play. How do you take that as a kind of a job?
I'm from the school of kind of where there is an extreme detachment for those things, right? Where the music I make or the way I DJ, I can't see how the two are related, right? But I can see how me being a person there is the factor, right? So I'm the DJ. People have these expectations and guesses of a personality, and maybe your manager is the one that's selling that, or your agent is selling this personality package. You really don't have a lot of control how people perceive you, right? Like, everyone wants to be seen as like that fun DJ that everyone can relate to and is cutting edge vibe. Like, there's nobody that doesn't want that, right? So, but at the same time, I think one of the things I do try to portray to people, like, if anything, like, anybody can do this. Like, if I can DJ, like, DJing is, and music and using technology is like, it's the whole point of it, right? Is to make things easier and more accessible. And there shouldn't be this barrier of entry to this thing. So if this goofy old Japanese woman can do this and post memes all day, like, you should take a crack at it, you know? And the tools now are easier to use and they're more accessible. Have a go, right? Like, but like, people will show up to gigs sometimes and be like, oh, I follow you on social media. You're nothing like I thought you'd be. I'm like, what do you want me to be, like Robert Smith cutting myself on stage or something? You know, so I'm usually just like playing a video game in the corner before I play. So there are, I'm sure there's always expectations when people come to see you play. You want to be nice to folks that spent their money to come see you. Money is tight now, right? So especially if someone's on a holiday and they take the time to come see you play or they buy your music, there's a level of appreciation there. But at the same time, like always, like there's a bit of like, bro, you don't know me. Like, don't people often kind of cross those lines very easily too because of that familiarity. I'm sure like every other artist you meet, they're sending you SoundCloud links at all hours of the night and talking about collabs and remixes and can you get me on this lineup because you're friends. And sometimes you'd be like, listen, I work in the music industry. Everyone I know is in the music industry. So there is this like, it's a difficult to navigate situation to stay personable and nice, but at the same time, give yourself a little bit of room with folks to be like, this is like, you're a professional, right? So there is almost this cutoff where you hang up your hat sometimes and you're not listening to a million SoundCloud demos from people over Instagram, and you can't give everybody good feedback, even if you wanted to. So, anyways.
Do you struggle to switch off?
It's a weird part of that is like, because I'm just always on the computer or the phone, the connection is always there. Like I am an internet and computer and synth addict, and the switch off is tough. It's almost like when I am at a gig, I'm probably the least social, versus like afterwards online, I'm maybe responding to people, but at the show, I'm like hiding and trying not to, trying to focus on the situation. So yeah, the switch off is tough because you are putting yourself out there, right? Yeah. So there's a bit of like, gosh, what did people say about me? And, as much as you try to not read comments about things, you're like, what did this fucker call me? And then you're like looking them up online. You're like, oh, I'm going to get this dude or whatever. So yeah, it is a tough thing. And social media makes that tougher, right? Because, you post something or a set or a picture, people are going to have comments about it. Yeah. And how do you not take something personally when someone says something to you, right?
Yeah, I think that famous saying, isn't it? You could have 1,000 positive comments and one person say a negative thing, and you only listen to the negative thing. And I think that's a human being trait. I'm not too sure where that comes from. There's got to be some history behind that, but that does happen. Luckily, I feel like it doesn't happen so much in music. I feel like it would happen more in other situations and in other jobs. Especially if you were a model or you're a comedian or something like that, where you're kind of really putting either your body on the line or your views on the line, or if you're a politician or something like that. I think in music it's generally a pretty friendly community apart from one person. But then I also think if somebody gives you a negative comment, it's more so a representation of they're having a bad day rather than the representation of your performance.
Right. Because when is it ever actually about the performance? When have people ever been like, man, that filter sweep was weird, or like, why did you like bring that in at that point, like that.
Yeah.
Or, gosh, I hate the way you like scratched that intro. You never hear that, but like, recently, there was some other video floating around social media where there's some, I think, a female DJ playing, and like, of course, they're like, oh, she's not really DJing. And, it's one of those things that the lights are hitting the CDJs weird. And if you've ever looked at an LCD, you know that at an angle, you can't see those things. Yeah. And like, this person does this professionally for a living. If you do anything every week for a year is a statistical impossibility that you won't learn the kind of muscle memory on how to beat match and mix a record, right? Like it'd be so much harder to mimic this. Like, can you imagine having a CD and knowing when to do things like on time? Like that would be a crazy feat. Like that's what I want to actually see. That's a challenge. I want to see someone actually mimic a set and do things at certain times. It's freaking impossible, you know? Yeah. And the technology is there where like, you really don't need to beat match now if you don't want to, right? Like, I don't know what else I'm going to do with the time. So I do it to be doing something. And yeah, it feels good. And, you know, plus these new like CDJ 3000s, they feel different. So I better kind of learn those.
Get used to it. Yeah. They change them all the time. You gotta get used to it. Yeah.
The resistance is different. And, but yeah, you'll still see these crazy comments where folks are just, and I'm sure there's a bit of comedy behind that, right? People are trying to be funny and make the most outlandish comment, but there is sometimes some like real venom in those words. And you're like, gosh, that's someone's like sister or whatever. And let's say they were pretending like, so I don't know, do you really care? You're playing at some like pizza shop in Ibiza, like, no. Let them do their thing. There's still plenty of space for you to do the thing you're doing. You're never going to be at this place. So why do you care?
Yeah, that's the thing that's really hit home for me recently, or in the last like year since coming back from COVID, is that there's space for everybody. And I think it's really important to remember that there's space for everybody. And whatever you're doing as a human being in any walk of life, like there's going to be somebody else that is either comparing themselves to you or you're comparing yourself to them. But to realize that you're actually never going to be that human being, and you're never going to walk the same life. You're never going to do the same steps in that person's career, in that person's life. But there's space for you to do whatever you want to do.
Absolutely, especially with the internet now, right? Now there's so many different outlets. The barrier for entry is less than it was. I'm not sure when you started producing, but like, think how much gear used to cost. Like before, like the Korg Volcas kind of launched the cheap gear revolution. Getting any kind of like decent electronic music piece of gear was like a dream, right? It was every 90s DJ regretting selling their 909 because their party sucked, right? And they had to pay their artists. So there's all this cool stuff now, and everyone is making interesting things. The DAWs are easy to use. There's sequencers that understand what notes you should be putting in and what notes you shouldn't. But it's also like there is all this room, but it's also like, you know, I think part of the problem of the music industry, or especially DJing electronic music, is while there are all these places, there are still these like goalposts, right? Whether it's like the Berghain or it is the Amnesia. And they only have so many slots, right? So to be those folks, the Michael Jordans of music, those are always that exception to the rule. So it is, especially when you may be friends with those folks. And I would say one of the nice things about electronic music and DJs, and the fact that there's so many of them, is like, it's pretty common that like your favorite DJ is, you're going to have a conversation with them, right? Whereas like for me to like hang out and talk to Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails is kind of an unlikely situation, right? So almost understanding that dynamic, it gets tricky, right? Because you're always like, God, I wish I could be playing Circo Loco right now. I could be like, you look at this awesome DJ and you're like, oh, I wish that was me, right? And then you start daydreaming, and your hopes and wishes and all that start coming into play. And you know what? There's only 5 DJs that night, and that lineup was booked 2 years ago, probably. So it does get tough when you feel like you're not that person in that, right?
How do you deal with that though? Because I feel like everyone goes through that.
Right. It's weird because I've been on, both sides where things are great. And it's a feast or famine thing, right? Sometimes gigs are hot, sometimes they're not. No matter what, jealousy is part of that, right? Totally. When you see somebody and you're like, oh man, I wish that was me.
Yeah.
I could do that. Or you start envisioning yourself with that life. And sometimes that daydream goes for an hour and it gets really complicated. And you have all these aspects of your life that you start daydreaming about. And it's important to hold on to those goals and say, like, that is a goalpost. But it gets messy when you start being like, well, this person is there because they did this and they know this person, or they're putting their politics in front and that's what they got them that gig. And you know what? Everything is circumstantial, right? Everything happened because you were there at a certain time. And were you ready when that happened? And, I think amongst our friends, we call it the eye of Sauron, right? Like that's like always kind of looking, and sometimes it's going to hit you and sometimes it's not. And all you can really do is be prepared if it hits you, because it's a big if, right? The music industry and folks, how many, I'm sure, thousands of DJs, how many even have a gig this weekend, right? It's just, this is how things work. And the perception is every DJ's marketing team is going to be like, oh, they're killing it and all that.
Of course.
It's not necessarily the reality of the situation. So on the other side, if you're just starting off, you're probably buying into the fact that, oh, these folks are just touring the world and they're making millions of dollars and flying private jets. And gosh darn it, I've been DJing since 2001, and I have all the original pressings of these things on vinyl, and I've got a rotary mixer.
Yeah,
it should be me. And that's fine. You should think, like, don't step up to the decks if you're not confident in what you can do. If you can at least deliver what you're saying you can do, you've messed up, because that second that eye of Sauron comes to you and you step up and you don't do what you said you're going to be able to do, the likelihood of it coming back around gets even less. But like, gosh, I get jealous of my best friends, right? Like, I'm like, man, I was supposed to play with them, or I was supposed to be on that booking, or like your friends are throwing the party and they didn't put you on the lineup, and you're like, oh, this would have worked. That's part of anything, right? Like, if you don't get invited to dinner and everyone's eating this like awesome thing, or people do a thing, that's just, I think that's part of it. And the second you start injecting, I mean, you have to be honest with yourself and be like, gosh, I really want that. And sometimes it's human to maybe say something nasty to your friend and be like, gosh, you didn't book me, you jerk, or that will have consequences, right? Or you say something crazy to a promoter or something, they're gonna be like, oh, fuck that bitch, I'm not booking her again, she's really rude. So I'm sure, I don't know, how do you deal with that? It's messy.
It's tough, isn't it? Because it is the fact of life generally, like you said. There's rejection in everything, and I think rejection is like the worst thing for me personally, but I'm so used to it in music that I'm great in music. But rejection in like my personal life, I'm so bad at. Like, if a girl rejects me, if you know what I mean, it's like it's the worst.
I know what you mean.
It's the fucking worst. However, if somebody like, if my record doesn't get put on the radio, or somebody doesn't like my record, or I don't get the show, I think I've built a wall where I can deal with that really easily. But that's taken so many years to kind of get there, where I look at it more as it happened for a reason rather than as rejection.
do you find that percentages are changing? Like, so I give people the advice of the 80-20 rule, where like 80% of the music I make is trash.
Yeah.
Right? It's unusable. 80% of the gigs I want, I don't get.
Yeah.
I show you the 20%, and the 20% is on the table, but like, you have to make that up with frequency or just hard work. Do you feel like those percentages are getting better for you, where the what's left on the table or the rejection is less and less?
I don't know. I think maybe, but I think that's because I've molded my world so it allows me to control what I put out and what I do. And that's taken time to get there. But like, I started a record label because I was fed up with people not wanting to release the records I wanted to write. And I felt that these records work really well, but because they don't fit the sound of somebody else's record label, then they're not signing them. So like, in releasing music wise, that was really helpful. And I get to call the shots on everything. With regards to shows, like, I'm extremely fortunate. I'm busy. I'm very busy. And
telling it right now.
Yeah, and life's really good. However, I think it would be wrong for me to say that I still don't compare myself to others, and I still don't, like, I'm here, but I should be here, right?
Right.
And I think even when I got to here, I'm going to be like, well, why aren't I there? And I think that's part of me as a human being. I feel like it's part of a lot of us in the industry, that I don't know if I've actually met somebody that's genuinely not trying to achieve more, and just sustain where they're at. I don't know.
Right.
What about you?
No, I mean, I guess I'm friends with a lot of people. Personally, we have a lot of self-esteem issues too, where it's like, oh gosh, everyone hates us now, and gosh, I mean, if you want to get into music and be a DJ, you have to be a bit of a glutton for punishment, and it's like, part of this is like, it's how you take the lumps that sometimes people will judge you by, because I know a lot of folks that are so talented and so amazing, but anytime things don't go well for them, they are saying the craziest things about people in the industry and their peers, and blaming everything but what actually occurred, maybe, right? That they aren't on this festival lineup, there are major systematic problems that I think block artists that should be featured. There's no denying that. But at its core, I'm sure you're friends with promoters, right? They're people, and to tell them what their lineup should be, right? So most of the time, promoters are just as much music lovers as an artist or a DJ. And lots of times they were DJs. And they're just trying to put together a good time and a party that they think is best, based on the music that they really enjoy or they think is going to be the proper vibe. So, like, I would hate for me to get a party together of my friends and I, and someone to be like, you have no idea what you're doing. Yeah. You have no idea about music. The person that says that to me, it's not the person I'm going to go back and be like, yo, they better headline my show next time, right? Even if they could be the most amazing person, you're just really unpleasant to deal with. So why am I going to even talk to you again, right? So it gets tough, because it's okay to say you're frustrated, right? And like,
totally.
But if you can't deal with the frustration, like, this is absolutely not for you, because the rejection comes so extreme, and so like it's heartbreak at first, right? You are like, it's the worst thing to do if you can't handle rejection.
It's also,
you do get used to it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's also funny, isn't it? Because how times can change. Like you saying that is just literally reminding me of a conversation I had right before we got on this podcast with my manager. Is that like we've got a show coming up on Halloween weekend, and we've been looking forward to it for a while. Hasn't been announced, and then yesterday, another club announced a huge lineup in the same city, and you're just like, fuck's sake, like we were guaranteed to sell this fucker out. Like it was, and now that's been announced. It's like, for fuck, like, and it goes from like one point to like, this is going to be the best party ever, I cannot wait, to then going, oh Jesus, this is going to be stressful.
Yeah.
And I think that the realization that nothing's easy, nothing should be easy. Like, if going back to that situation, if we go and sell that party out, we've worked our asses off, and and it will actually be better once we sell that out in that situation, because we've actually worked for it, and it's not just been a sailing, like just plain sailing. We've really all put our heads together and worked out how to make this party the best party for everybody and for us. And I think that's the thing, is that the amount of work you have to put in is insane, and people just don't see that.
People don't, and people shouldn't have to see that.
Totally agree.
But it's also like, as at a certain point, when you make the decision that this is your work, you are professional, and you are taking risks with this, and there is a whole bunch of stuff that people don't see that is the end product, right? And that's not necessarily the track, right? Because that track was 30 to 40 tracks before it ended up there, and that was you arguing with someone about what that track should be, and then there was the whole release of it, and then putting it in the right DJ's hands so it gets played, and even your best friend, you're like, hey, can you play this? And they don't play it, and you're like, oh, you fucker. You know? And like, oh, it would have been so great if you put that on your essential mix or something. And they're like, oh, screw you, I'm not putting on my essential mix, you know? And it comes in waves. Some days it's easy to deal with that, and you're like, that's the business, and that's how things go. But sometimes when like that gig you thought was going to happen doesn't come through, like you're taking a nap the rest of the day, and you're like, gosh, everything sucks right now, and now everything is screwed up, and I don't know what to do. But yeah, you have to prepare yourself for that. And then some days nobody calls, right? They're like, you're not playing any shows that week, and nobody's buying any records, and you have to respect that. You know?
How many times have you wanted to quit?
I have quit before.
Really? Talk me about it. I want to know.
I started, I don't disclose my age because I'm old, but I used to be a drum and bass DJ back in the day. And there was just this time that music took a turn that I was not into. This is kind of when like the Blog House had blown up, and the Electro Clash thing happened, and the indie dance. This is like right pre-EDM, and you know, I didn't see a place for me in music, and I was like, well, probably time like I be an adult and get a job and all those kinds of things, and that was the right choice for me at the time. But music had changed, the technology had changed, the tools had changed, and it became interesting again. But yeah, I would say even a couple times, I don't know for you how things went during lockdown, but right before lockdown, I was like, gosh, I'm really taking this seriously now. And I'm putting effort into things I never put effort into before. And when things went away for 2 years, I really didn't think they were coming back for me, right? I was like, it's probably the really established artists will have some life after this, because what clubs are going to be left, what promoters are going to be left. there's so many folks you probably know that have exited the industry at this point, right? Whether they're managers, agents, they had to work restaurant. Everyone had to find a way to get by, right? And for some folks, like, they found something else they liked during that time. So there was definitely the thought of, this is now no longer part of my life. That didn't mean that I didn't spend every other night in the studio, you know, playing punk rock songs or just like doing covers just for fun, right? Some great gear came out during that time, so it was entertaining. It's also like, when people quit DJing, what does that really mean? Because it's like, I'm quitting DJing because no one is calling. So de facto, I don't have any gigs. So might as well say I quit. But I bet you if somebody called and was like, would you like some money? And I'd be like, I would love some money. That'd be really cool. How long would that really stick, right? You know?
What job did you do when you actually quit, like pre-EDM? What job did you do?
I was teaching and working in IT, kind of just various things. Mostly working in education, doing computer work and a little bit of systems administration, stuff like that. That's one of those things where, like, the act of making music for me is a very similar itch to scratch. Like, I was a photo major in college, and it took me a while to figure out that I didn't actually like photography. I liked cameras, right? And I liked messing with them and figuring them out, and new sensors and playing with chemistry and stuff. And I think half of making music for me is actually just playing with stuff, right? Like it's like a video game or a transformer or something. Like, it's this act of fiddling, and sometimes you have an end result of it, right? But sometimes you don't, and you're just playing with a filter. And like, God, this sounds amazing, you know? And I paid a lot of money for it, so it better sound amazing, right?
It's really interesting you say that, because that's kind of gone for me. Where, don't get me wrong, I love making music and I love being in the studio, and I'm in the studio a lot. But that experimenting side of things has completely gone for me. Where, like, I buy I'll get a synth or something and be like,
I'm just staring at that, by the way.
I get like a synth and won't even experiment with it. It will literally be, I know what I want this synth for. This is like for one thing, and then that's it. And I don't know why, but I think it's because have this thing in my head where every time I go into the studio, I have to create something that's going to be a good record. And that fucking does my head in every time.
Gosh, that is a great goal. Like, so I don't know if you know David Flores Truncate at all. So,
I don't know him personally, but I know him as an artist.
He just shits out amazing tracks constantly at a rate that, like, our friend group, it just kills us. Like, we barely got anything done during lockdown, and my friend Drumcell and I were just constantly watching David just, without batting an eyelash, just shit this trail of amazing songs. And like, man, I got like 50 10-second loops done. But yeah, I think it kind of goes in waves for me where like I can get a track done, but it's also most of the time I'm just sitting there making noises, and that's just as entertaining for me. But gosh, yeah, I have a hard time finishing songs, and you know, maybe I'll get your advice sometime on this, where as there's hard to see a finish line on these things for me, especially when it's like when you're very loop oriented and you're like, well, this is it, this is the meld point where things come together. Why does there have to be a story here? Why does there have to be a track and an intro and a thing? I just like this 10 seconds. Can't it just be its own thing? So I work with a lot of other artists. And one of the reasons I came back into music was I would help people finish music and work in studios.
That's interesting.
They had the ideas.
Sorry, that's interesting that you go and help finish ideas when you struggle to finish your own ideas.
Because it's the idea, right? It's like, for me, I get a lot of good feelings about helping people make music in the way that maybe the DAW is this barrier, or learning the synth is this technology barrier. And so they can't quite realize their ambitions because of a technology question, right? Or tool question. And it's not about their ideas or the creative juices. Whereas I have to get some drum machine going personally with a random pattern for me to even start making a track, right? Like I've never, unless it's like a rock song or kind of even then I'm just stacking guitar pedals and randomly coming up with stuff. The second I sit down at the studio, my mind goes blank. I could have like even hummed something into a phone, which is like, and then I go back to, I'm like, what is this? I don't even know what I'm trying to do here. Like, how embarrassing. So, the way I've overcome that is by volume. I continually will go to the studio, make stuff, buy a drum machine that I'm still paying for on credit card. So I have a guilt that I have to use it. And things will happen. And I guess, God, it's a terrible way to make music, but it's how things happen for me. So.
Well, I think it's whatever works for you, right?
Yeah.
You can't change who you are and your process, or you can evolve the process, I guess. But yeah, for me, is like finishing is the goal. Like I hate having loads of ideas, and I like to just, okay, this is a solid idea, unless the idea is terrible, and I'm just like, but I generally then will evolve the idea into something I like. So there might be like 10 versions.
Do you feel like you have an idea for a track and then you go in the studio and you get close to what you envisioned?
Depends. At this moment in time, I'm working on a project which I'm working with other producers and other singers and songwriters. And I go in with an idea in my head and go, this is what I want. And it's more so, can we make something that mimics this idea that I can then go and rework in the studio for me to make it into something else? So I'm pretty much kind of making my own samples, which I've never really done before. I've usually gone and sampled. And I'm fed up with trying to clear samples. So I am now at the point where I want to make my own samples. So this is like a whole new world to me, really. Like, I've written songs in the past, but this is like pretty much writing from scratch. And there's something about it that is so liberating, where you...
How much do you have to consider your collaborators' feelings and input that are parts of this?
Well, it's for a Will Clarke project. So it's a Will Clarke thing. And everybody knows going into the sessions that it's a Will Clarke thing. And I'm very kind of strict upon that. I know I've had situations where I've gone in for a Will Clarke session and it's turned out to be somebody else's record, and it just fucks you over massively.
Yeah.
So I'm very strict on that, and it's like, this is the goal. This is what this session's for, way before the session even happens. But I think taking other people's thoughts and considerations is what the whole point of creating music is for me now. I've written music for 16 years by myself, and I've been in a little studio somewhere in the world and really just made everything myself. And now for me, it's like I wrote so much during lockdown. I remember going through
I hate you.
I remember going through all the demos with my manager, and there was like 60 records that were just like there.
Oh my God. Okay.
Just like in a folder that obviously hardly any of them came out, but I think lockdown actually destroyed my creativity for a period because I wrote so much, and now I need to change my whole approach on how I write music. And it's for the last 6 months, it's been me trying to learn how to do that. And also on top of that, touring and doing everything else that we have to do.
Finding time to actually
and
sit down and get it done, right?
Yeah, which is I don't think I've been this busy before in my life, which I'm really lucky. But I think when you're busy, it does stop the creativity, which is why I book specific times out into the studio, and I have to do that. And I think that puts even more pressure on me to actually complete something. Yeah.
Do you feel like lockdown was a creative opportunity for you, or do you think do you think lockdown kind of musically benefited you in any way, or do you think it was like a terrible thing?
I think it really helped me to a certain extent, but I think it also completely fucked over my plans like it did the rest of the world. Going, I know this is the first time we've like really ever spoke, but like going in, and I don't know if you know much about my history, but going into lockdown, I literally just launched my label. So I launched my label in 2020. My biggest
amazing timing, Christ.
And so January to March was my first. I did like an open to close tour in America. So that was like my first. This is Will Clarke. This is Will Clarke, not linked to anybody else. This is his record label. This is his music. Blah blah blah. I had my first release on the label in January the 31st, I think. And then my second release was April 2020, which was, obviously we were in lockdown, but it was also my biggest record I've ever had. So
wow.
It was kind of a weird situation for me where obviously, so I'm not too sure if you're aware, but I live in Detroit as well.
Yeah, I know your roommate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Do you know Ryan?
I do know Ryan. Yeah.
Ryan and
I
Victoria,
love Ryan.
they're the best.
What an amazing.
Yeah, he's the
amazing
best.
producer.
When you were saying you're friends with Truncate and Drumcell, I was like, I'm pretty sure you must know each other. But I hadn't been back in the UK for like, I'd been back in the UK on and off, but I hadn't been back for a long time, for like 6-7 years, because I was just touring. So coming back to the UK and being like, right, I'm back. I live next door to my parents, so my parents are like just there pretty much. And being able to come back here and just like resettle everything, I think it really helped. It allowed me to release music that I probably wouldn't have ever released, because I pretty much only release dance floor ready music. And there were some records that I still haven't even played now because they just don't fit my sets. So cut a long story short, I think lockdown actually really helped me.
Do you think for me, releasing during lockdown just didn't work, right? The releases they had nowhere to be played. They didn't get featured anywhere. How did you get over that, where the releases did something if there was not much of a dance floor?
I think, yeah, you're right. There was certain records that didn't do anything, and I kind of just learnt to have zero expectations on that. But then there was records for me that came out that I was like, I don't get how this is doing well. But I'm just fortunate enough that it did do well, and like I'm really lucky to have like a good label team on my label that we just we had nothing else to do apart from work our asses off and just make sure that these things do well. I think, it's mad to say, but all of my records that I released during lockdown were my most successful records.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing is I was super lucky with that. And then coming out of lockdown, I had some pretty successful records that were very random club records that I was just like, I don't see this happening. But it goes back to what we were saying earlier. It was just, I was just super lucky. Yeah. Like I think in lockdown, I realized I need to stay relevant if I want something to happen for me after COVID, after lockdown. And that's the reason why I started the podcast, because I didn't do a single live stream. I was super anti live streams. But I wanted to do something to kind of bring it.
Did you feel awkward DJing, or did you just feel like it was not the place for it?
For me, a party, and this is my personal view, and I know a lot of people disagree with this, but
sure.
My view on live streams is when I'm DJing, I want to be in a venue and be able to interact with people. When I DJ,
because that's your feedback, right?
Yeah, that's how I kind of DJ. I could sit in a corner and just play a bunch of records by myself, but I'm not going to be playing what you'd necessarily want me to play. I just felt there was a huge disconnect for me and people listening. I didn't even do one. I refused. I was just like, this just isn't for me. But I wanted to do something. So I started this podcast. I also filmed like a cooking show, which
nice.
I've not put out yet. I'm still I haven't put that out, which I think I'm gonna.
Can you tell me one of the dishes that you made?
Chicken tikka. Like I did like 11 shows.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I'm very interested.
I like cooking a lot, and I really wanted to do something a bit different. I think I'd like to get your thoughts on this, but it feels like for a long time in the industry, you could only do one thing, and you're kind of known to be one thing. And if you step out of that, a lot of people are like, why are you doing this? Like, you're known for this, you stick to doing this. I want to change that. I don't agree that everybody should do one thing for their whole career. I really think that's really unimaginative and uncreative. And I think for me is like wanting to do different things in the industry, outside the industry. And I think that's where everyone should do. Like say for instance with you, like you love tech. Like, what's stopping you do that as a job as well? What's stopping anything like that? And I think, what's your thoughts on that?
I think realistically, it's about presentation, because the idea that somebody is just doing this thing, it's unrealistic. It's probably not real, right? Yeah. So to just do one thing and be sustainable at that, where the rent is paid and you can go out to eat comfortably. It most of the time there's always multiple hustles, right? And sometimes people don't publicize those because you might be a DJ and you're also an Uber driver, and you don't feel great about telling the world that you're an Uber driver for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But it's also like I think post lockdown and during lockdown, there was kind of a need to almost bring down the facade with people and be like, I'm sitting at home like you, just hating things right now. Maybe not hating things, but things are tough, and it was a reset in the way that like I'm just as much not a DJ as you are at this moment. Yeah. I'm not a DJ. Like I don't have a gig next week, so I can't even call myself a DJ. So there was this time that you had to almost make that decision again, right? It was almost like, maybe not for everybody, but it felt like starting over, right? Where the pieces had to be in place for when things did open again, right? You couldn't just be like, I can't wait till things open again and I'm booked, right? You were chasing down dates and club openings again and contracts that needed to be moved up. There was a whole mess of stuff, and other people may be dealing with that. So there was also opportunity for people to get in on that too, right? And part of this is like, I haven't played in 2 years.
Yeah.
You could be the dude now when shit reopens. Just you need to put the work in now and be ready. Who knows when this is going to happen? Because we all kept thinking it was like in a couple months or something like that, and things kept pushing. But I think going back to doing multiple things, like I've always done multiple things, whether it's been like writing about, I used to review video games and review anime and get paid for it when you could get paid for writing. I used to cover MMA fights so I could get in free to like UFC events and like,
that's so cool.
Because they're so expensive back in the day, right? Especially in Japan, it's like a fight is very expensive. So, I think, but at the same time, it's hard to say you do all these things and then present that online. People want to see like Will Clarke, the DJ and producer, and he does these other things, but it's even like, let's say Joe Rogan, right? Joe Rogan is now the podcast dude. He's no longer the Fear Factor UFC announcer guy, right? People are like, oh, that guy does. So it's whatever thing I'm doing, if people are interested in it, that's great, right? I don't know how much people are going to publicly be interested in me like modding a video game or something like that. So it's less glamorous and interesting, right? But it is part of you, right? And I think watching people do podcasts and listening to people's actual thoughts on stuff, like there's so many, like when they did DJs and beers and all these things, I never knew what any of them thought about many of those things. I never really thought to ask. Right. But it's also there is this line that now also people maybe demand all this extra information about people. Like, I need to know this DJ's or artist's thoughts on this particular issue. Where do they stand on this thing? And sometimes people ask me and I'm like, I don't actually even know what you're talking about. I can't give you an opinion. I'm sorry, I didn't know that happened, and I've got to do a little bit of research and come back to you. And gosh, I don't know if I want to answer this question in the way you're asking me. It feels like you're setting me up for something. So I think it's a fine line on how much you present yourself, right? Because sometimes you're opening yourself up to like
can of worms.
You're like, gosh, now they can make fun of my cooking. That hurts. When someone is like, dude, that looks terrible. I bet you're going to be like, damn, I can't believe this person just dissed my food.
No, to be fair, in that situation, I don't think I would, because I'm not the best cook. But I think that's the thing. It's, for me, it's like, you said it, you hit the nail on the head, is how you present it. And it's Action Bronson, for me, does it the best way and the most authentic. Like, he was this super overweight hip hop eater, right? He was known for his fuck me, it's delicious, and then he was a rapper. Now he's like super into fitness and health. That slid in there. Now he's like this super healthy guy. He's still into food. He's still into rapping, and he's into tasting olive oil. Like the way it's, if you listed that out, you'd be like, nah, none of this makes sense together. But how it's presented is key, and it works so well.
There's so many copycats now, though. If you go on YouTube, that have like try to take his formula, and I'm like, oh my gosh. you could do something else. You
but
don't have to
that's
be
the thing,
Action
isn't
Bronson.
You've got to be yourself. You've got to be authentic. And if people will see through it if you're not.
Yeah, people are smart, right?
They're not stupid.
They're not stupid. And it's like, if you're doing something and you can tell that you're just not into it, then just don't do it. Or take a nap that day if that's not the day to do it. Because, people will tune out pretty quickly on stuff like that. And,
I totally agree.
You know, there's folks I know that do a lot of streaming and they're more successful than they were in the club, right? Maybe they were like a bar DJ or something like that. And they found this home in Twitch and these things. And they tried to go back to DJing in the bar or the club. And they're like, this is not for me anymore. Yeah. Now I've moved on to this internet world that doesn't work for me because I feel super awkward. It's just DJing, and maybe there's a friend of mine in the room like throwing stuff at me or yelling at me while we're DJing. Or I'm like looking at the camera like, God, is this a fat angle? Like double chin in this, like how do I look right now? And it didn't feel right for myself. It was a lot about like, when I played, I need the feedback, right? Because I've got 50 directions I could go musically. All of them are valid. If I'm just going and there's no crowd there, I'm probably making not a very good choice, right? Because DJing for myself, I'm listening to albums generally then, right? Yeah. I'd rather listen to like a front to back album, the way the artists intended to do it, instead of like, part of me DJing is I'm like ADD and I don't want to listen to the whole track. I'm like, I got to get out of this before like there's a drop, or
I love that.
I don't want to hear all this going on. So, streaming online was not for me, but I do enjoy watching it, especially the streams that are interactive with folks, especially when some people generally had nobody to talk to during that time. And so going on to stream and making friends and his communities. And my friend Kyle Geiger has a Twitch stream, and these folks jump on there every week and they've all become friends and they've met up in person, and it's actually become this really cool thing. And it helps a lot of people, right? Where there was no physical space for some people, even still, right? There are these circumstances. So I like that exists.
Community is super important. And I think we all crave community in some shape or form. And I do think how the pandemic kind of evolved communities was really special, and seeing so many people have a very successful career coming out of the pandemic because of building those communities. I think it just goes to show that to have a successful career, you have to build a community around who you are as a person or around something. And that's super important to me. Just having, it doesn't matter how big that community is. It can be 10 people, it could be 10,000 people. But if you're building communities, you're giving back to the world, which is way more important than anything else.
How do you think you're in Bristol right now, right?
Yeah, I'm in Somerset, so just outside Bristol, yeah.
Somerset. So how has been the response and attendance to clubs and events been there? Has there been like this, especially in Chicago, there was this peak and then this like sudden decline, and things will kind of pop off again, but there's absolutely been a lull as of late here, and I think it's got a lot to do with people's financial situations.
It's the same. I've noticed that world round everywhere I go, is that obviously coming out of lockdown, everyone goes and parties. Christmas time, it was all a bit up in the air around the new kind of variants, and now like there's a lot of shows getting cancelled because they're not selling I think what's happened is pre-sales aren't being bought. People don't buy pre-sales anymore
because they don't want to plan.
Exactly.
And they got burned a million times from
which
buying
I
pre-sales.
understand. I totally understand, but I think promoters, agents, managers, and artists haven't gotten that into their heads yet. That the party's still going to be good. People were still going to turn up, but they just don't buy pre-sales. And even the big guys, I think the big guys are suffering the most. The festival curators and promoters, the big shows, Defected, like putting on huge parties in London, like that kind of need the pre-sales to then pay for the rest of the party. These shows are slowly getting cancelled. I know quite a lot of big promoters in America that are just reducing the capacity massively to their festivals because they can't get the numbers, and because there's so many people trying to throw parties. Like, say for instance, the party that we did in Detroit. Historically, that would sell out 2 weeks before.
Right.
It sold out on the night, and Chuck won't mind me saying this, but he was shitting his pants. But the thing is
City Club is always sold out.
Exactly.
Right? Like, that is just, yeah.
They did 700 tickets on the door. Like, that's obscene. And I think it's just the way times are changing, is that I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. I think it's just change. And I think we as people in the industry have to kind of evolve with the change and accept that not everyone can afford to pay $40 to go to a show. Like, sure. I couldn't afford to go to a show when I was 20 years old, 21 years old, 18 years old and pay $40. Like, in the UK back then, it was £5 to go to a show and maybe 20 quid to go see a big live show. Like, it's so expensive now.
Even movement, sometimes it'd be like, I'm going to pay to go to the festival, or I'm going to pay to go to afterwards.
Exactly.
Right? You kind of, and you got to pay for the hotel. So things add up, and things are crazy expensive now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just getting there, and hotels, and yeah.
And that's the thing, is even for us, like, it's expensive, right? Like, I'm playing flights. Yeah, I'm playing in LA in a couple of weeks, and I'm then going to LA to Milwaukee. The flight was $800.
Yeah, I got one of those coming up.
Yeah, and you're just like, fuck me. How do people, like, I'm fortunate enough that I can afford to do that, right?
Right.
And I think this is the thing, is like, it's very easy for me to complain about this, but there's people out there that are suffering a lot harder than me and can't even afford to pay electricity and put a roof over their head. And I think there's a bigger issues in the world than that.
But if you are trying to be a starting touring artist right now,
it's hard.
Gosh, can you imagine with the cost of stuff? Like,
I would
stay local.
I would just tell everyone to get a job, and I don't mean that in a horrible way. It's kind of how I started. Is I had a full-time job beforehand, and I carried on working until I couldn't carry on working, and that allowed me to afford the situation of being able to tour.
How did you know that moment when that life handed over to the other one?
It just got to a point where I had to. It got to a point where I was I had to write music. I had to concentrate on writing music more than just working a full-time job and then writing at night. And there was going to be a point where my life would change, and I needed to dedicate more time to writing music, because otherwise it would have all just folded in.
Yeah.
And the job wouldn't have worked, and then the music wouldn't have worked, because I was just too burnt out to do anything.
Was that scary to make that decision?
No, because it was always what I wanted. Always what I wanted. What about you?
I've gotten back and forth with that stuff, especially having other things to be able to turn back to during COVID to be able to pay bills. Like I mentioned, for a moment, I was like, well, that's it. The music thing is over. And gosh, I'm lucky to have these other skills that I can do, whether it's part-time or as a gig or something. I better hone these in, right? And get good at them. And maybe I should try to pursue, I just remember this. Maybe I should try to pursue a really good job in finance and tech or something like that. Especially when there was this like tech boom and everyone's like, if you work in technology, you can work from home and do all these crazy things, and you start buying into that. But yeah, I was also just super depressed. I was like, I don't want to do that either. I just want to sleep and play Final Fantasy. But it's like I said, I had made a choice before to go into the full-time job thing, and it's in the end, the bills do need to get paid, right? So it's like I'm one of those folks that, gosh, I'll do almost anything, right? Like we'll go work at a grocery store, whatever, if the bills need to get paid. Lots of little things, like I would write for magazines, I would write for things just to kind of have multiple sources of income if need be.
I love that.
It's like I kind of always keep these things at the ready. It's like it's part of the anxiety in life, and kind of like constantly being a prepper is thinking like, I've got the tool set if this thing happens, right? So apocalypse scenario preparations, got things ready to go. So because in my mind, there has been the times that music wasn't making money and people weren't interested in what I was doing. And I can't say I was doing much different during those times that I'm doing things now. So, it could go away tomorrow. So I have to always be prepared. And there could be another lockdown. There could be another crazy situation. The world could end. The thing, the most... It's crazy, the cataclysmic cards that are on the table right now, right? That if you would have said these are the factors of the planet to me 10 years ago, I wouldn't have. I thought you'd be talking about a sci-fi novel, right? So
yeah, totally.
It's things are so crazy that I never would say I wouldn't do any of that stuff. But while there are opportunities for me in music, you better believe I'm going to try to take advantage of those and maximize those, because this is what I've wanted.
That's amazing, and you deserve every bit of what you get. I know you have a very strong following, and it's super nice to see you on lineups and kind of play shows. It's really it really is though, because I think as a community of artists, although I kind of hate saying that word, but it's like we just know how hard it takes to get somewhere, and when something's happening for somebody, it makes me so happy. Just being able to get that. So keep it up. You are doing the right thing, and I'm very positive that it will remain for forever.
I'm sure I'll mess something up, and then you can be like, I told you not to post that, Hiroko.
We've just done an hour and 40 minutes. So I think we should wrap that up, because I could go on forever, but I've got another one in 10 minutes.
Fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on. And it's been a pleasure to sit down and have a conversation with you. And pretty much the first conversation we've actually had is been on here, which has been really nice.
Yeah, a little less like, well, no.
How's it going?
Like,
yeah.
Hey. No, I really appreciate that. I love everything I'm doing right now, and I can't wait to. I'm sure I'm running into you somewhere this summer. So
probably.
We'll wrestle or have a drink.
Definitely. How can people follow you and do all of that?
You can find me on my social medias. The Instagram is Hiroko, HIROKO __ YAMAMURA, Yamamura. Most of the time you have to type the whole thing out because I have a shadow ban on my account 50% of the time. And then you just kind of try to type my name in Google and I'm sure something will come up. Just various postings and stuff.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. Sure, we'll keep in touch, but keep safe and I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. I will see you soon, Will. Thank you.
Big love. Thank you.
Talk to you later.
See you later. And that is a wrap. Big love to Hiroko for coming on. I love that conversation. I hope you did too. Please share, please subscribe, send it to your mates. See you all very soon. Keep safe.